Okay, I'm going to walk you through this macro AS MCQ paper. So let's get going. So question 1, changes in real GDP. I'm already thinking real is to do with inflation, GDP is to do with growth. Are used to measure inflation, the level of employment, economic growth, or the distribution of income. Okay, let's look at what are the measurements of each of these. Inflation is CPI, or unofficially the old measure, which is RPI. Then you've got the level of employment. There is no measure for the level of employment. There's a measure for the level of unemployment, and that is the claimant count or the labour force survey. Economic growth, which is clearly the answer because real GDP is economic growth, and the distribution of income, that is measured by the Lorenz curve. Okay, let's go through number 2. The diagram below shows two aggregate demand curves, AD for an economy, and we can see that it's AD to AD1 to AD2. So there's been a shift out. Straight away we're thinking AD is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Okay, so we're looking for, and always watch these because there's always that you need to know, because if it's an increase or decrease, it's going to make a big difference to your answer. So there's been a shift out due to an increase in something. So an increase in exports is definitely going to increase AD. So that is the answer. However, it seems like the examiners have made a problem here because, and if you can find it now, well done to you, but let's just go through it. So an increase in the rate of inflation. Rate of inflation has nothing to do with increasing AD. So we know it's not that. Increase in interest rates. So if there's an increase in interest rates, then that means that you're more incentivized to save. So your marginal propensity to save goes up. So therefore your marginal propensity to consume goes down, and if your marginal propensity to consume goes down, then consumption goes down, and therefore AD goes down, which is not what's happened here, so we know it's not that. Which means, if you got it, it was also the budget deficit is another correct answer, which is crazy. So who would have thought AQA could do this? So a budget deficit, an increase in the budget deficit. The budget deficit, remember, is effectively that difference between your tax revenue, so your revenue, and your gov spending. So your revenue and your gov spending. The deficit, the debt has increased. That means that you've had a higher government spending than the actual tax revenue that's been taken in. So if you've expanded your budget deficit, you've increased it, then that means you've actually effectively increased your government spending. So if your government spending has gone up, G goes up, then AD will go up. So that is also the correct answer. So the answer actually on this was 2 of them. That won't happen in your exam. It was a big boo-boo by AQA that year. We'll move on to number 3. So number 3, all other things being equal, the long-run aggregate supply of an economy is likely to shift to the right if there is an increase in something. So we're looking for something that is going to shift your LRES to the right. Remember, LRES, you're thinking about EPIC. You're thinking about efficiency, productivity, incentives, competition. Okay, so it's to the right, and it's an increase in something. Let's go backwards here. So increase in wage rates is definitely SRAS. It's not LRES. Increase in raw materials is definitely SRAS. So it's not that. Indirect taxation. So if there is an increase in indirect taxation, so taxes go up, then that's likely to in fact be inefficient, and that would shift the LRS to the left. So it's not going to be that. So therefore, by deduction, it has to be A. Factor mobility. Factor mobility is when you think of the factors of production, which we know as capital, land, labour, enterprise. and it's about if you can swap between them, if there's mobility between them. Usually it is capital and labour, and with technology it's about having factor mobility from moving your labour towards machinery or capital. So if there's an increase in this ability, yes, it would cause the LRAS to shift to the right, because it's certainly going to be more productive, more efficient. So therefore it has to be number 3. Okay, we go through number 4 now. So a country has a slow rate of growth of productivity and rising cyclical unemployment. All other things being equal, which measures are most likely to increase the rate of growth of productivity and reduce cyclical, so demand efficient unemployment? First things, when I see the word productivity, straight away I'm thinking LRAS. And I see cyclical unemployment, I'm thinking about AD going down effectively, because it's when your actual growth is below your trend growth. So we are looking for which measures are most likely to increase, let's get that keyword, increase the rate of growth. So what's going to make LRAS go to the right, and what's going to make, we're looking to most likely to increase the rate of growth of productivity, and reduce cyclical unemployment. So we get something that's going to effectively make AD go up. So we're looking for 2 rights. So increase investment and increased saving. Okay, right, straight away, increased saving. If saving goes up, then consumption just goes in the opposite direction. So if consumption's going down, we know AD is going down, so it can't be that. Let's look at B. So more government spending on training. That sounds like LRS to the right. And a higher exchange rate. Okay, higher exchange rate, you're thinking spiced. And so strong pound, imports cheap, exports dear. So we've hit the strong pound, imports cheap, which means M will go up, and exports dear, not good for your exporters, so X down, which means overall your X minus M, if that's happening, means your X minus M is going, it's going down. Okay, so if X minus M is going down, you know that AD is going down, and we want AD to go up, so I don't think so. Okay, so number 4, decreased benefit payments and a lower budget deficit. Decreased benefit payments, that's less government spending effectively, and a lower budget deficit. A little hack for you is that if you see the words budget deficit, yes, before we were looking at effectively is how much more debt you've gone in because you've overspent in your terms of your government spending versus your tax revenue. But effectively, if you just replace the words budget deficit with government spending, it's exactly the same thing. So if your budget deficit has decreased, it means you effectively had less government spending. So if you've got less government spending twice there, then that's definitely going to make AD go to the left, and you want it going to the right. So it ain't that. So it must be D, regardless of reading it, unless AQA made another mistake. So lower taxation on firms, lower taxes is definitely a form of supply side policies. So that would hopefully increase the rate of growth of productivity. So lower taxes can have an effect on the long run aggregate supply curve. So LRES going to the right, and lower interest rates. So lower interest rates means increased investment, because it's just cheaper to borrow money now. Increased investment will mean that AD goes up. So you've got AD going up and you've got LRES going to the right, so it must be D. Number 5, the diagram below, that's that diagram, shows 2 aggregate demand curves, AD1, AD2, so it must be shifting out. And the short run aggregate supply curve, SRAS, for an economy. Okay, fantastic. All other things being equal, which one of the following is the most likely cause of the movement of the economy from equilibrium Y1 to equilibrium Y2? So that's Y1 to Y2. So basically, what has shifted our aggregate demand? Okay, let's get the language right. So a decrease in imports. So if M goes down, we know that AD must go up. That's already the answer, isn't it? Okay, so that's got to be the answer. Let's go through the others. An increase in savings. So if savings go up, consumption goes in the opposite direction, and that means AD goes down, so it's not that. C, a decrease in the money supply. Okay, for that, we can draw a diagram. The diagram there is you've got interest rates on the y-axis and quantity of money on the x-axis. The money supply is always a perfectly inelastic curve because it's regulated by the central bank. Okay, and then you've got demand for money, which is just like a standard demand curve. And if you go take the equilibrium, that means the interest rate is there. If you have a decrease in the money supply, that means the money supply has shifted in to MS1, so therefore the interest rate has gone up. And let's just work on the logic of that. So if the interest rates go up, you have more incentive to save, so therefore saving goes up and consumption goes in the opposite direction of savings, so consumption goes down. If consumption goes down, AD goes down. We're looking for something that makes AD go up. It ain't that. Okay, D, increase in productivity. You've seen the word productivity straight away. You're thinking LRES. This question has nothing to do with LRES. It says SRES, so it's not that. It is A. Brilliant. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, let's look at number 6. The table below shows how the index of GDP, not real GDP, GDP, and the index of population changed in an economy between 2011 and 2015. Things to note straight away, it's saying GDP, it's not saying real GDP, which is when you take account for inflation. 2013 is the base year, so this is the base population. 2013 is saying that's the base, so this is what they're saying is the year that everything is being worked out from. So these numbers are therefore less, it's leading into it, and then it seems to increase afterwards. Things to note, that we're clearly looking at GDP per capita here, but not real GDP. So GDP per capita. Okay, let's go through this. Which one of the following can be inferred from the data? So population was higher than GDP, so from the data. Population was higher than GDP in 2011. Okay, we don't know that on the basis that these are all numbers that have been put into an index, and the index has a base year of 100. You can't infer that from the data. What they've done is they've taken whatever was the year in that, and every year they've taken whatever was the year as the index in 2013, and then everything is being calculated off of that. So population was higher than GDP in 2011. It's just nonsense. It's not that. Okay, B. Between 2011 and 2013, GDP grew by 8%, whereas population grew by 3%. Okay, this is the classic trick question, because if you just looked at 2011, 2013, you'd say, oh yeah, it's 100 minus 92, that's 8%, but it's not, because you need to go back to your basics. Remember, it is new minus old over old to get your percentage change. So if you work it out, so your new, it would be here 100, your old would be 92 in the case of GDP, and your old is 92. And if you work that out, it does not equal exactly 8%. It's going to be more than 8%. And likewise, the same for your population. It is not just simply 100 minus 97. You need to be doing your new, what you're moving towards, minus old over old, and it's not going to be 3%. It will be something that is slightly greater than 3%. So that is your trick question on indexes. So it's not that. C, there was no growth in GDP per capita. So that's GDP per capita population between 2013 and 2015. So we can see there was a 3, because we're going from the base year here, we can see there was a 3% increase here and GDP, and there was a 3% increase in population. So it's actually stayed totally in parity, in line. So there was no growth in GDP per capita. If it was there growth in GDP? Well, yes, there was. But it's GDP per capita. There was definitely no growth. So it is this, because you can see these lines have remained at a ratio of 1. Money GDP, so that's GDP when you're not taking into account inflation, increased by more than real GDP between 2011 and 2015. That's the trick, because there's no mention of inflation in this question, so there's no way you could know the real GDP. So the answer is C. Okay, number 7. As a consequence of a severe global recession, an economy has experienced a demand-side shock, and is now growing below its trend rate. So we're thinking trend rate of growth and your actual growth, and obviously if it's below, then it's going to be there, your actual growth is going to be there, which effectively means AD has gone down. So all other things being equal, which of the following combinations, A, B, C or D, is now most likely to exist? So it's not looking for the policy to solve it, it's looking for the consequences or the outcomes. Okay, in that case, if AD is going down, that clearly means unemployment is going to increase, and when AD goes down, the price level will decrease. So we're just looking for that, and that I can see is C, because unemployment increasing, rate of inflation falling, which is the price level falling. So the answer there is C. Number 8. In which one of the following situations could the UK be said to be experiencing a negative output gap? Okay, negative output gap. Diagram for that. Price level, real GDP, and remember you do your SRAS, you do your AD, and then always just, oh, how did I miss that? You do your LRAS straight through the middle of those, and then if you're at a negative output gap, it means you're not at this point here, you're slightly before it, so that just could be AD is slightly off at the moment, so therefore you're not at X, you're at Y, and that's your negative output gap. So we're looking at which one of the following situations could the UK be said to be experiencing a negative output gap. So it's the consequences, not the policies to solve it. It's already there, the definition is there in B. So real GDP in the UK is less than in the economy's productive potential. So your productive potential is effectively your LRAS. So LRAS, which is basically X on my really terrible diagram, and negative output gap means you'd be at something less than that, so Y, for example. So that is exactly what we've defined here. Okay, let's move on to number 9. Structural unemployment is most likely to occur because of... So structural unemployment is when industries have problems and the industries are declining, for example, and therefore with the coal miners is the classic example, and therefore employers have to reskill and move into other industries, and it's usually long term, and I can actually see it there. So it's D, long term changes in the pattern, long term, which is the key, the pattern of demand for the products of particular industries. So it will have to be D for this one. So it's nothing to do with seasonal nature, fluctuations in the level of aggregate demand, it's nothing to do with that. That is going to be likely frictional. And labour being temporarily unemployed when moving between jobs, that is frictional. Fluctuations in the level of aggregate demand, that is cyclical. Okay, let's move on to number 10. So an economy is in macroeconomic equilibrium, producing at its normal capacity level of output. Normal. So normal is the same as natural, is the same as full. With long-run economic growth, a persistent increase in aggregate demand is likely to lead to an increase in the level of R. Okay, right. You can answer this for a diagram. So PL, R, GDP. Just chucking a Keynesian. Imagine you had it's a straight line. Imagine you had AD and you had a persistent increase in AD to AD1. What is increasing? It is clearly the prices. The price level is increasing. Because at this point, our GDP is not necessarily increasing because you're at full or natural or normal employment. So it is not that. Employment is derived from your increases in GDP. So when you're at full, it's not actually increasing. Productivity is nothing to do with aggregate demand, it's to do with LRAS. So it is prices, as you see in that diagram. So it is, that's the answer. Okay. Okay, number 11. Which one of the following combinations, A, B, C, or D, is most likely to occur in the recovery phase of an economic cycle? Recovery phase. So if you see recovery, you're thinking effectively reflation. So just chuck in a Keynesian. So you're thinking about somewhere around here. So an AD to AD1 shift is what you're thinking when you think about recovery phase. So we're looking for the most likely things to occur in that. Well, in that you're going to definitely have an increase in GDP, our GDP. So we know it's not going to be a decrease. So it's not A. Now we're going to look at, so it's got to be one of B, C, or D. Inflation rate. So your inflation rate is likely to, well, it's only giving you two options here, increase or decrease. It's only going to be increasing, isn't it? Because you don't have, although my diagram is so bad that it's almost downhill, it's only ever going to be going up. So inflation, so just to be clear here, if you could put a classical SRAS in, and it would be, inflation would be going up. So we can get rid of all the decreases. So it's looking already like it's going to be C. And if you've got an increase in GDP, you're going to have an increase in employment or a decrease in unemployment, so that's correct. And if you're at the recovery phase of the economic cycle and you've got the growth of GDP is increasing, then based on the accelerated theory, so when the rate of growth is increasing, then investment will likely increase too. So that is correct. So it is C. Table below shows different sets of changes taking place in an economy. All other things being equal, which one of the following combinations, A, B, C, or D, is most likely to have the effect of shifting SRAS to the left? So we're thinking something that's going to make that happen. Okay. Exchange rates and taxes on business profits. Okay, let's take the easier one first, which is taxes. So if taxes are going up, that's definitely a cost of production, which is effectively what the SRAS curve is. So we're looking for taxes going up. So it can be that. So it can't be falling and it can't be falling. So we've made this a 50-50 already. So now we just need to think about, I'll just scribble this out just because I'm weird. Let's go through. So exchange rate is falling. So this is all about your imports, so importing your raw materials. So if the pound is getting, and I'm just going to use that because it's easier, if the pound is getting weaker, then importers have effectively their raw materials cost more. So that's not a good thing. And if your imports cost more due to the pound getting weaker, then that will move SRAS to the left or upwards. So it has to be a falling exchange rate. So it's not going to be a rising. So therefore it has to be A. Because if it was a rising exchange rate, then that means your costs of production are actually going to go to the right, because effectively it is cheaper for you to buy in your raw materials from abroad. Okay, the current account of the balance of payments is in surplus, so it's a positive number. However, it's definitely not the UK then. However, there are deficits on the, so negative on the balance of trade in goods and the balance of trade in services. It can be included that. Okay, let's just write this out. So if you've got, so you've got the balance of payments on current account, the formula for it is already half there. So it is about the trade in goods, the trade in services, and then it's about primary income and secondary income flows. So if this is negative, so there are deficits on the balance of trade in goods and the balance of trade in services. So you're saying these are negative, but overall it's a surplus. Then these two definitely have to be bigger than these two. So overall they must be positive. So is that answer there? It is here. So the combined primary and secondary income flows, transfers, balance must be positive. Definitely. So it is C. Okay, 14. Which one of the following is an example of contractionary fiscal policy? So fiscal policy, we're thinking about government spending and taxes. And if it's contractionary, then that's all about AD going down. So that's going to be government spending reduced or taxes going up. So that's effectively what we're looking for. So decreasing the supply of credit. Credit is effectively money. So you talk about the money supply, that is monetary policy, so it's not that. Increasing spending on welfare benefits, that's effectively increasing government spending, so it's not that. Reducing progressive taxation, so it's not that. So we know it's going to be D, but let's just go through it. So increasing the size of the budget surplus, because if you've got government spending going down and you've got taxes going up, then it's likely that you're going to have a budget surplus and it's going to be increasing the size of it. So therefore 14 is D. Okay, let's go on to 15. All other things being equal. Oh, I'll just move it up. Number 15. All other things being equal, an increase in the exchange rate of the pound against other currencies due to a rise in interest rates is most likely to cause an increase in the UK's So increase in exchange rate due to a rise, wrong way around. So there was a rise in interest rates and it caused, I'm guessing because of hot money inflows, the strength of the pound to go up. Okay, and then it's caused the increase in something. Let's just go through that then. So if you've got, so let's just go through the answers. So A, surplus on the current account balance of payments. So we're talking about balance of payments, so X minus M. Right, if you've got your exchange rate going up, that is effectively, and I'm just going to go through it because it's so important, is spiced, because exchange rate's going up, so that's a strong pound. Imports cheap, so if imports are cheap, then imports are going up. If exports are dear, then exports are going down. So overall, your net trade, your X minus M, must be going down. And that is effectively a deficit. So you're not going to have an increase in your surplus. So it is not that. B, price of imported goods. We just went through that. There's not going to be an increase in the price of imported goods. There's going to be a decrease because of spiced. Okay. Right. 15. So increase in the UK's level of unemployment. Increase in the UK's level of unemployment. So you are saying, okay, right. So you've got interest rates are going up. So that means effectively you could say that savings is going to go up. So therefore consumption's going down, ceteris paribus, AD is going down, AD goes down, unemployment or employment will go down, which means unemployment is going to go up. So increase in the level of unemployment. So that is correct. And let's just go for what the other one is. So there's going to be a rise in interest rates. It's most likely to cause an increase in the UK's rate of economic growth. We just said in this that the rate of economic growth was going down, so it's not that. So it's got to be 15 is C. Okay, number 16. Quickly go through this before my battery runs out. So budget deficit deficit. Do not get confused with a trade deficit. A budget deficit is most likely to occur when. So what is a budget deficit? It's all about your government spending and your taxes. So if you've got a deficit, it means your taxes it means your government spending is greater than your taxes. Effectively, that's what it means, okay? Because you're outspending how much you're bringing in, because that is going out and that is coming in. So if you're out, it's more than in. That ain't good. Okay. Budget deficit is most likely to occur when the value of imports exceeds the value of exports. Well, that is just a trick for if you are a numpty and you don't know. That is just a trick for if you don't know the difference between a budget deficit and a trade deficit. So that's just a classic catch you out. You've not been listening, so it's not that. Budget deficit is most likely to occur when government spending exceeds tax revenue. Government spending exceeds tax revenue. Well, it's obviously that. Volume of imports exceeds volume outputs. It's just more tricky on the trade deficit. They've gone with the double. Really clever ploy there. And D, direct and indirect taxes are reduced. Well, that's only half the story, so that's nonsense. So it is going to be, well, I've lost it now. It's going to be B. Okay. Okay, number 18. Which one of the following statements relating to the use of supply side policy is correct? Okay, so we know what supply side policy is. That's, you're thinking LRAS and you're thinking something that is epic. Okay, so supply side improvements in the economy can only be brought about by government policy. The key word there is only, because you can certainly have an increase in productivity, which is a type of supply side policy that will shift LRAS to the right. So it's not only brought about by government policy, so it's not that. Supply side policies are intended to increase the long run trend of economic growth. That's exactly what the definition for it, so we know that's the answer. Supply side policies are designed to reduce the size of a negative output gap. Reduce the size of a negative output gap. Output gaps are really all about AD, so it's not going to be that. D, supply side policies ensure increased capacity utilisation in the economy. Okay, so capacity utilisation is effectively closely related to output gaps. So if you have a situation where you are at full employment, so you get 80 up there, and that's your RGDP, then you are at 100% capacity utilisation. So supply side policies ensure increased capacity utilisation in the economy. Well, technically they don't, because a supply side policy is shifting out, so it's actually making your capacity utilisation bigger, so it doesn't ensure that you get increased capacity utilisation. So capacity utilisation, you think about output gaps and effectively just AD, so it's not going to be D, so it must be B is the answer. Okay, number 19. In the circular flow of income model, which one of the following equations is correct? Oh my days. Okay, this is, if you're getting this one wrong, you need to spend less time on Netflix. So we know that income equals output equals expenditure. Has to be that. Okay, income equals output equals injections, no. Output equals expenditure equals withdrawals, no. Expenditure equals income equals injections equals withdrawals. This is total nonsense. Okay, so it has to be A. Let's move on to 20. So 20. The diagram below shows two aggregate demand curves. So you've got AD and AD1, so it's shifting out, and two long-run aggregate supply curves. So LRS is shifting out. The economy's initial equilibrium is E1, and all other things being equal, which one of the following combinations of macroeconomic policies is the most likely to have moved it to new equilibrium of E2? So what got it there? Which is obviously something that makes LRAS go up and something that makes AD go up. So they're saying that they could use monetary policy or fiscal policy. Okay, let's take the easy one here just to deduce it. So if AD is going up, then we're looking for interest rates going down, because if interest rates go down, it makes consumption go up, investment go up, and therefore AD go up, which is what happened there. So we're looking for interest rates down. So we know it can't be an increase in interest rates, can't be an increase in interest rates. So it's got to be either B or D. Let's just get rid of that. Okay, so on the fiscal policy side, it's a little devious question here. So fiscal policy, you need to remember that taxes, yes, they can affect AD, but taxes also are a form of supply side policies, because within EPIC, well, they help improve incentives. So there's incentives for firms to increase productivity. So in this case, there's a reduction in direct taxes. So if you reduce taxes, then you increase incentives, which is therefore a supply side policy, and therefore LRS will go right. So it must be reduction in interest rates and reduction in direct taxes, not that. Okay, that comes to the conclusion for this. I hope that helped, and good luck with your revision.